I have tried to film this video 3 times now. The first time, I had the monitoring on for my audio, so there was an echo. And then I went back to film it, and my camera mount fell and broke, so I can't use my phone to record anymore. And then the third time,
that burned down, fell over, then sank into the swamp.
this video's cursed. So I hope that you enjoy it. And if you do, like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. I've got quite a few other videos in the works. But I just wanted to come out front and just say you're watching a cursed video right now. So if I get eaten by a panther tomorrow, I don't know. That's just what happens, I guess. So in the ever-evolving discussion of great video game soundtracks, there's, bound to be a few gems that slip through the cracks. Some babies lost within the bathwater, if you will. Obscured behind the veil of your Minecrafts and Skyrims and Dooms, there are some really unique and hidden gems that, while maybe not on the same level, deserve to at least be in the room when we're discussing great video game soundtracks. In this series, I plan on going over some of the soundtracks that I think deserve to be in the discussion when we're talking about great soundtracks that, maybe haven't gotten the recognition I feel they deserve. But this episode, we will be focusing on SimCity 4.
I want to take this time to introduce you to one of our most recent creations.
So there's not a lot of information about this soundtrack online. When you look up the Skyrim soundtrack, there's so much info on the recording and inspiration and the history of what all influenced. This, is of course partially due to the fact that Skyrim came out, later than SimCity 4, meaning that, coverage of video games and what goes into making them was a lot more in depth. So it's understandable that there aren't as many details about the creation of the soundtrack, but this is all we get in the wiki. Come on. There's 3 hours of music in this game, and all we get is this flaccid excuse for a paragraph talking about it. But I did do a little bit of digging around, and I found out that there is a link to the composer, Jerry Martin, his website, where he lists all the game that he's worked on, and this man is a certified banger factory. I mean, just look at this list. We've got Spore, banger. The Sims, banger. The Sims 2, absolute banger. SimCity 3000, amazing. And all the Sims 1 DLC, it just doesn't stop. And of course, the guest of honor this evening is SimCity 4. This man does not quit. It also lists his email that he can be reached at, and I did send him a list of questions, but it's been 2 months and I haven't heard back. So, dear Jerry, I wrote you, but you still ain't calling. SimCity 4 to my ears has 3 distinct soundscapes. There are the more ambient tracks, which are my in-game favorite. Some more very hip-hop, R&B, and jazz influenced tracks, and then more groove-based electronic tracks. We're going to start our journey into the soundtrack with the electronic section. Now, let's see how long it takes EA to copyright strike this video. So this section of the soundtrack has a lot of very synth-driven tracks with much more upfront drums and percussion, but still generally maintains an atmospheric vibe, with a lot of wide pads and airy melodies accompanying various other instruments. But the thing that separates these songs from the ambient section for me is the percussion. The drums on these songs are a lot more prominent and typically more upbeat, So while the melodies and vibes of the tracks can meld together with the atmospheric ones, there's definitely a separation. A lot of the synths and instruments on these tracks demand a bit more attention also, especially the rhythm sections. But when playing the game, I found that the really upfront and driven drums could start to make me feel very overwhelmed. Something about, the driving beats made me feel rushed during a game that can already get kind of stressful. Now, that's not to say I don't like these tracks. This section of the soundtrack has great songs in it. It's really good driving music. The songs build very well and always seem to go where you want them to go, so you never get taken out of the vibe from like a jarring transition or unexpected like weird key change. Overall, this is a very solid section of the soundtrack. I really enjoy these tracks. It's just that when I have to focus on some terrible event in my game, or my advisors are all yelling at me about simultaneously having not enough roads but also too many roads, I need something a little softer coming out of the speakers. I've got 3 top tracks. I narrowed it down to 3 top tracks for this section, and that's Electric City, Epicenter, and Oasis. So we'll start with the first track, Electric City. It opens up with a really cool, like, gated synth establishing the chord progression for the song before the bass comes in and sets up a bit more of like the sonic foundation for the next section, which has some of my favorite sounds and melodies, honestly, in the whole soundtrack. There's a smattering of instruments that take turns in the spotlight, bringing little melodies into the conversation without changing the feel of the track or overstaying their welcome. It's a very solid track from start to finish, with the repeated chords giving it a clear identity, but with the evolving instruments and melodies that come in, it doesn't get too repetitive, which can happen when you've got pretty static chord progression. So I really like that about this track. Oasis is really cool. The guitar intro has this really uneasy feeling that honestly never gets resolved. It just kind of like plays and then stops and leaves room for some other things before coming right back in. I really like that about it. Oasis really lives up to its name with the hand-pan melodies and wide open synths, giving you a sense of calm when taken in context with what all may be going on in your game at any given moment. It's a mostly very relaxed track, with the guitar coming in to remind you occasionally that you can't really rest too much when you're running an entire metropolis. Epicenter is my favorite from this section of the soundtrack. The choir pad in the intro that leads into the solo vocal melody on top of the solid rhythm section scratches a very particular sonic itch that exists in my brain. There's only one other song that I can think of off the top of my head that has that same vibe to it. As the track progresses, it seems to get thinner and thinner, giving it space to build back up for that vocal solo to come back in sort of towards the end. I am curious to know, and this was one of the questions that I asked Jerry, if the vocals are a real world language or if it's in Simlish, or if they're just vocal noises. Because I can't pick anything out, but I also only fluently speak one language, so, you know. So now we're going to go into what is my least favorite section in the game, but possibly my favorite section out of game. So this is the like hip hop and R&B and jazz influence section. Now, don't get me wrong, I love a definition of melody bending saxophone solo as much as the next weird guy, I mean, one of my favorite bands is what I can only describe as an organized cacophony. But I like all that stuff, not while I'm trying to manage a city. That being said, this section is really good. The tracks are so much fun, and some of the melodies and chord choices are very interesting. It's just that, like in the electronic section, these tracks demand too much of my attention, and I really need to focus on making my advisors happy when it's impossible to have all of them happy all the time. Especially if you have random disasters turned on. If there's a saxophone or trumpet solo going on while I'm recovering from a volcano, I will probably have an aneurysm. So a good portion of the tracks in this section give me like 1980s commercial that's trying to be hip and cool, and I love that. It's that like, look kids, we know what rap is, here's a record scratch and some syncopated drums, now come on down to Burger King kind of vibe. It's so cheesy and it's so good, and it fills my soul with happiness. But there are also tracks on here that are genuinely interesting from a music theory standpoint. If I had more knowledge on the subject and felt like I could analyze these tracks better, they would probably be worth a deep dive, but I only took some music theory classes in high school, and then one in college before I decided it would be a lot cooler to smoke weed and play metal. Anyway, let's talk about some of my favorite tracks from this section. We'll go with 3 again, although I think all of them are very good. Urban Underground, Gritty City, and Rush Hour are my top tracks here. Urban Underground starts with just a really mean bass line, and then we get like a Rhodes piano coming in, and some like glass bell synths laying down a nice foundation, and then a trumpet solo comes in and builds on it. It's got big Hey Arnold vibes. Like, I feel like I should be laying down watching the stars in that unreasonably awesome bedroom that he had while I'm listening to this track. Gritty City just comes out of the gate swinging. Another just really filthy bass track with a nice little slap riff, and just like, it's really good. And then around the 1 minute mark, we get this guitar riff that has like a harmonized fuzz going on. It's a really interesting tone, and I really like it. But then after that, it just jumps into this weird like psychedelic break, and then we're back into the motif after that. It's really interesting. This song has a lot of like kind of psychedelic rock undertones, with the whole second half of the track just being a trippy synth adventure, with like really the only thing connecting it being the drums. Overall, this song is a very nice like adventure all the way through. For our last track, we have Rush Hour. This track starts out with a really solid, drum groove that carries you through to the star of this track, an absolutely insane saxophone solo. I don't know who was on the sax for this track, but I imagine they walked into the booth and just asked, how hard do you want this sax to go? And Jerry said yes, because it rips. Unfortunately, though, it only comes in for a few bars here and there, but the track itself really favors like the main repeated groove, but the saxophone leaves a crazy impression on you that you'll be thinking about long after the track is over. Lastly, we'll cover my favorite section of the soundtrack, and the one that has the most content, and that's the ambient section. This is the place where I thrive, the bed of audio upon which I relax the hardest, the soundscapes that carry me through the most stressful traffic rebuilds in the game. These tracks, I think, are honestly the best suited for games like SimCity 4. If I'm focused on juggling all of these things that I have to take care of during games like this, I don't also need the music to be demanding my attention. I need something that will occupy my ears, but not add to everything that I'm trying to focus on. And the tracks in the other sections demand my attention enough to where they can be distracting sometimes when I'm playing the game. This section separates itself from the electronic section by generally being slower, and the synths are a lot softer with lots of reverb on top of gentle, if any, percussion. These tracks in my mind fit the perspective of the game well also. It sounds very cloud-like with faint rhythmic elements, giving the audible sense of being above the clouds with the sounds of the city gently rolling up to you. I don't have as much to say about this section as the last two. I pretty much just like everything about it, so there's not a lot for me to pick apart and not much for me to say other than this song's really good and I really like listening to it. These songs are here as atmosphere. They want to enhance your focus, not take away from it. These tracks know what they need to bring to the table, and they don't really try to do any more than that. My list of favorite tracks from this section is pretty long, but I think I've narrowed it down to 3, which is Floating Population, Metropolis, and Area 52. Area 52 is just a really nice bed of synths with some faint drums underneath to give it a sense of motion, until around the 3.5 minute mark where a flutist comes in and just rips a solo. It's genuinely pretty shreddy, but it doesn't really detract from the vibe at all. It's just sort of like, here's a very interesting section in an otherwise just chill track. Metropolis just comes in swinging with immaculate vibes. The like hand pan or steel drum that starts off the track just shows up to say, hey, I'm here, but don't worry, we're chilling. And then there's this solo violin that comes in on top of everything else. It's like a bird song on top of the faint noise of the city. This track really gives you a very floaty feeling and generally just keeps that feeling going for 5 minutes with a bit of like kind of jammy guitar towards the end, and then the track just fades out. And we've come to it. My favorite track from the whole soundtrack, Floating Population. It starts off with like a faint bell synth before the star of the show jumps into the scene. It's another solo violin. I don't know who Jerry got to play the violin for this soundtrack, but they absolutely nailed it. This violin keeps this beautiful melody going for the first half minute or so before the bell synth comes back as a nice background lead. The violin is still in the conversation though and keeps popping in and out every now and then with little bits and pieces before it drops one of the best melodic runs in the game, in my opinion, exactly at 3 minutes and 33 seconds. It's so good. I think this track is perfect, and especially nostalgically, the memories that this song conjures of playing this game as a kid trying to build the perfect town are so good. I think I've been a sucker for a solo violin in a soundtrack since the first time I heard the theme of the Rohirrim. It's marked in my brain as that means this is a good song. In a game like SimCity 4, where there's no dialogue and the only ambience that you might have is of the city if you zoom in enough, the soundtrack has a lot of weight to carry. And I think Jerry absolutely nailed it with this soundtrack. While I personally can't handle listening to all of the tracks during gameplay, that doesn't detract from the fact that this is 3 hours of solid tunes. It's incredibly impressive, and if you're a fan of ambient music or sort of like cityscape music, I guess is kind of the best way I can put it. This soundtrack is perfect, and you should absolutely give it a listen. I hope you enjoyed watching me gush over a great soundtrack for a while. If you want to see more of this kind of retro-focused gaming content, you know, go ahead and like and subscribe to the video. You can't subscribe to a video. What am I saying? Like the video, subscribe to the channel. I've got another deep dive for like soundtracks in the pipeline for Lego Rock Raiders, and a longer video about one of my favorite D&D games of all time, Troika's Temple of Elemental Evil. That one's a bit longer than the stuff I've already released, so I'm pretty excited about it. But if you are still here, thank you for watching, and I hope you will check out the next video.